I speak 4 languages, and most of my success came from doing the basic, boring stuff that everyone already knows. But there's a few weird habits I've used and found really helpful that nobody seems to talk about. So today I wanted to share them with you and explain how you can use them to improve your language learning and get fluent faster. The first weird habit is that I value passion over basically everything. I'm gonna be real with you. Historically, I've been really shitty at staying consistent with stuff. I used to go to school one day and study my ass off, and the next day do basically nothing. I used to find a new hobby that I was super into and then just quit it like a few weeks later. But with language learning, it's been a little bit different because I've actually stayed consistent to it for about over 4 years now, which is pretty rare for me. And I attribute a lot of that to this one specific habit. Most gurus would probably tell you that you need to have this perfect structured routine and memorize 1,000 words a day with the optimal memorization system, and that every other method is completely stupid. Well, I think they're stupid, because all that'll do for you is burn you the F out before you even had time to make any kind of significant progress. Instead, I'm a big fan of having a basic routine that covers all the fundamental skills: grammar, words, listening, speaking, but that also adapts to your life and your interests. If I feel really motivated and I want to sit down and do 2 hours of formal Japanese study, I'll do that, and I'll take advantage of that. But if I've just watched a sick UFC event, I might just want to sit down and watch some Spanish commentary videos about that event from a favorite YouTuber of mine, or watch an interview with the fighter. And that's totally fine too, because I'm still making progress. And it's this flexibility, while still having some standards and like a basic routine behind it, that makes me stay consistent no matter my season in life or how I'm feeling or how busy I am. So I think it's really important that you sometimes just disregard what's optimal and give it the good old finger, and instead prioritize flexibility and finding ways to integrate language learning into your life in ways that make you excited to do it. And I think that's way more important than having the perfect routine. The second weird habit I have is that I speak to myself like a psycho. If you've been studying for a while but you still kind of suck at speaking, you probably need this. Because most people, they see speaking practice as sort of this binary black and white thing. Either you study or you sit down and speak and have a real conversation. But the problem with real conversations is that they're usually stressful as hell. Especially when you're new to a language, right? Because you feel all this pressure to perform and remember what you've learned. And if you mess up, you're like, oh shit, they're gonna judge me. And that's not very fun, and it's gonna make you way less motivated to actually practice speaking. But I see speaking more so as a spectrum. Over here, you have your real conversations where you speak with native speakers. And they're really good, but they have hella pressure because somebody's there judging you. And even further beyond, you have your you have your conversations in front of a crowd, like when you are in Spanish class and you get asked to speak in front of the whole class. That's really shitty because you have basically no more benefit, but now instead of having one person to judge you, you have 20, which will freak beginners out and really make the whole thing a lot less comfortable. But then here, on the other side, you have your psycho territory. And these are things that train the exact same skill of speaking, but with a fraction of the stress. The simplest form of speaking practice is speaking to yourself in your head. And a little step beyond that is speaking to yourself out loud. These are things that, when you think about it, they train all the same skills as having a conversation with someone else. You are remembering words, you are trying the grammar that you've learned, and you are even being able to correct yourself when you realize you said something wrong. But they have none of the downsides. So what I do is that I literally imagine I'm going psycho and I have voices in my head that I constantly respond to during the day to get extra speaking practice. So whenever I have a free moment, like if I'm waiting in the line somewhere, I might not speak out loud, but I think in my head. And if I'm in the shower, I can speak out loud. I can imagine myself being interviewed and giving answers in Spanish or Japanese. That practice is speaking, but it also just fills up time that I wouldn't have been using otherwise to do anything productive. So it's just completely free practice. And the best part about it is that when it's then time to have a real conversation, you don't go from 0 to nothing. You've already spoken, so you already know that you can do that, which means that the gap from not speaking to speaking becomes a lot smaller. So my recommendation here would be to not see speaking practice as a black and white thing, and instead to see it at different stages of difficulty. And if you're new to speaking, there's no shame in starting on the lower levels. And I still, to this day, spend time doing easy speaking practice whenever I have time over, because it's a really easy way to fill your time and get better at the language for free. The third weird habit is that I use something called systems thinking. There's two types of language learners. The first one I call the maximalists. They use 5 different apps, they have multiple different textbooks, they are writing down everything, taking notes, and really being hardcore about it. And the other type is the minimalist. This is the person who has maybe one app, maybe one textbook, and they're just going through it a little bit, and they're studying consistently, but they're not doing a ton of things. This is sort of like your friend who's been using Duolingo for 3 years, but they still can't even hold a conversation. Both these people suffer from the same thing, a lack of systems thinking. But what the hell even is that? Well, in its simplest form, systems thinking is seeing everything not as individual pieces, but instead as a part of a bigger system where each individual thing you do impacts each other. When you stop seeing language learning as this abstract concept called language learning, and instead as different skills that are a combination of skills that are more or less useful at different points of time, you can sit back and look at your routine and realize what you're missing to improve, and also maybe what you're doing a little bit too much of, and what you can remove to narrow your focus and do only what's essential. Here's how I use it in practice. So instead of guessing and doing whatever feels kind of useful, I sit back and think, what are the core skills of language learning? Like I said earlier, it's really just words, it's how well you use them, which is grammar, it's hearing when someone else has used them, and it's also speaking and using them yourself. And so say I'm using Duolingo, I might look at it and think, okay, this teaches me words, but not super effectively. It doesn't really teach me how people actually use them in real life, because it's just like made up sentences, and it doesn't teach me how to speak. Okay, and then I have this other app over here that does pretty much the same thing. Well, then I can remove the worst one, and then maybe I realize that, shit, I'm not actually listening to the language a lot, and I don't have a regular way to practice speaking. So then you know that the reason you're not making so much progress is because you're lacking these two things. This concept, and just looking at things from the bigger picture, has helped me so much during my language learning journey, because whenever I've plateaued, like after a few months of Spanish, I plateaued, and I wasn't sure what I was doing wrong, so I just kept repeating what I'd been doing the first few months, but that didn't get me anywhere. Instead, I backed up and realized, oh shit, I've actually been studying a lot, and I've been learning grammar and words, but the way that the way that I'm able to recognize them in real life is very, very low, because I haven't spent enough time hearing them in real life. So I started listening more. And these are things that might not be obvious to you right off the bat, but when you have this systems thinking mentality, it can be really easy to find whatever is holding you back and remove that thing and get over your plateau. So if you want to see what that can look like in practice, I recommend watching the video on screen right here, where I go over my full routine and method that I've used to learn 4 languages. I appreciate you watching, and I'll see you there. And until next time, keep learning.